Vapi's AI workflow update is finally live, and it just made building AI voice agents insanely powerful. You can now create full call automations with global nodes. You can configure variables mid-call and customize each step to sound more human than ever before. In the next 20 minutes, I'll walk you through every single key change. I'll show you exactly how to build intelligent workflows from scratch, and at the end of it, I'm going to break down 3 real-world use cases, how you can use this technology to start automating your business today. If you're new to the channel, then welcome. My name's Liam. I help businesses all over the world to implement advanced AI phone agents into their companies. So if you'd like to explore how we can do the same for you, just use the first link down below to book a free AI consultation call. I'm limiting the spots at the moment, so I look forward to hearing from you, and now let's dive into the video. Alright, let's jump straight into what is new. So when you create a workflow, as you can see, there's a bunch of templates you can use, but we're going to start from blank. Now, this isn't going to be a tutorial where I go over everything voice AI related. I'm not going to cover prompt engineering in this. I'm not going to cover all the other features that Vapi has already talked about. I want to focus on everything that is new so you can get a very fast and quick insight into what you can now build with these. So as you know, first of all, we have to give a global prompt to this agent, because the way these work is that we're going to give it a general idea of who it is and what it does, but the specifics are all handled in this workflow that we build. Now, why do we do this? This is actually because almost everything that Vapi has added will reduce hallucinations immensely, and we're going to get into this further and further in the video. So to write a prompt, I just used my personal custom GPT to write a very brief prompt for a hotel, for example. If you want access to this, free link down below, no emails, just click the link and get access to the AI that writes my prompts. Now, this won't be a perfect prompt, of course, but for the sake of this demo, it will be more than good enough. Now, the big thing, as you know, prompts have sections like role, context, and so on. But what we can do here is remove the step-by-step, because all of that will be handled by the workflow. Okay, so what's new? So usually what you had to do when you built a workflow like this is you had nodes and transition conditions. So for example, if we build this for a hotel, we could have something like, in here we'd specify, go down this path if the caller wants to make a reservation in the restaurant, for example. And then we'd go here if they want to make a reservation in the hotel. All right. And the problem with this is that, say, for example, you call and you say, I want to make a reservation in the restaurant, and then you make your reservation, but and then you keep going down these workflows, right? It's very fixed. But what happens if mid workflow you actually decide, tell you what, I'm going to get an Uber Eats. Can I just make a reservation in the hotel? You can't go back. You can't backtrack these workflows. And the problem with this is that you have to hang up and you have to call the agent again to then go down the right route to the hotel. The only way to fix this was to actually connect every single one of these nodes up to the start node here. But that's just way too much work, which is why I've never used Vapi for these complex workflow builds. Now, what is the fix? The fix is something called a global node. Now, if you go into the node here and then click on global node and enable it, you can see that you have a little box here. And if you now paste that same transition condition in this box, and then we'll also do the same for this one in the hotel, you will now see that the agent can now jump to this node at any point in the conversation. So now the start node, it'll say something like, welcome to, I don't know, the Grand Hotel Geneva, for example. How can I help? And instead of having fixed nodes attached to this, we actually have fluid global nodes. So now the agent can just jump to this at any point. And this is particularly useful if you have something like a node here where the global node says something like jump here if the caller is frustrated and wants to talk to a human, for example. This is so great because now mid-conversation the agent realize, I'm not able to help, let me escalate this to a human. And then you can just use the transfer tool, which I'll show you more about later, to escalate this to a human. And one of the biggest upsides of workflows is that they're reliable, right? We don't want hallucinations in agents. We want it to do step by step exactly what we tell it in the prompt. That doesn't always happen, but with little mini prompts, because each of these conversations has a mini prompt, we reduce hallucinations almost by 100%. Now, the problem is that they're not very flexible, because when you get stuck in a workflow, you can't change. But with this, we have literally the best of both worlds. Now, the next thing I want to show you is that you can actually have multiple, like you can choose the LLM and the voice for each one of these nodes individually. And this is great for example, say you have a customer support team and you have multiple branches. Say you're an e-commerce store and you have one support team for one product and another support team for another product. And you can actually make it seem like the person is talking to many different people. So for example, we could set the voice for this one to Elliot, and for this one we can set it to Kylie, for example. And let me just quickly put some prompts in here. So for example, this one goes to the restaurant. You can say something like, greet the caller and ask what date and time they would like to make a reservation. Same for this one. And now when we give this a call, you will hear that it actually sounds like different people are answering the phone and they can transfer to one another.
Hey there.
Hey, how's it going? Could I just make a reservation in the restaurant, please?
Of course. What date and time would you
Actually,
like to make the
could I make a
reservation
reservation
for?
in the hotel instead?
Sure thing. What dates and time would you like to make a reservation for?
So as you can see here, it jumps between the nodes and it also has different voices. So you can set this up more properly than I have right now, of course. But instead of using squads, which can be unreliable at times, you can now use workflows to also simulate different agents in one agent. And the transitions are just phenomenal. Okay, let's keep going down this branch. So say, for example, we've gone down to the restaurant branch and the caller has asked if we have availability tomorrow at 10 a.m. for a reservation. Now, what we would do is usually we'd have a tool, but we actually now have this option to make an API request mid-call, which is so cool because now we can actually connect this to your booking software, for example, and get data real time in the call. Now, what's the difference between an API request or just using a tool like we usually do? Well, it depends on how complex the thing is that you're trying to achieve. If you're just trying to get availability, an API request will be just fine. But if you've got a larger workflow in the background, a tool will still be the way to go. So here you would just once again collect or just use a tool that you've pre-configured in the tools section and plug that straight in here. With the API request, you can actually configure everything right in here, like you usually would. And for the API request, as I said, just getting simple information into the call, that's all you need. If you have a larger workflow, like something like this in the background, where you want to connect multiple things, so you want to use OpenAI, then you want to use Google Sheets, you also want to use Slack, that's when you'd use a tool call which can do multiple things. But for just a simple checking for availability, an API request can be great. All right, now let's get to one of the coolest features that they've added, which is extracting dynamic variables mid-call. And here's what I mean. So for example, say we keep going down here. We've just asked the caller, what dates and time would you like to make a reservation for? We now use the API request to see if that's available. And now we add another conversation node to say something like this. Inform the caller whether or not those dates were available, and please repeat the dates back to them again to make sure that we checked for the right ones. Now, here we have a little room for error. Now the AI has to think, what dates did the caller request? And it has to think and look back into the past conversation. And then if I say something up here like tomorrow, for example, which would be the 10th of the 6th, this agent, it usually gets it right. But what we can do now is even cooler. If you go into here and click on extract variables, you can now extract variables to reuse at a later point in the call. So here, for example, let's set this to date. And then you can give it a mini prompt again saying the date the caller wants to make a reservation. And then we can also extract another one like time, and then the time There we go, that'll do. And now we have these two variables which were extracted. Now this is nothing new, but the new thing is that you can now reuse them in another prompt. So now we can say inform the caller whether or not those dates are available, and please repeat the dates to them back again. These were the dates. And now, as you can see in here, this will turn a different color in a moment. And that means that you can now reference, if you spell it correctly, date. There we go. You got to spell it exactly like it is there. And now this agent can now reference in a variable that you extracted in a past bit of the conversation, which makes it a lot more reliable. There's no more guessing involved. Now you can go even further with these. Say, for example, this AI doesn't just make bookings for the hotel, but we can add another node, which, for example, say this one, add a global node and say, if the caller has a complaint about their room quality, for example, and then something like this, assess the urgency of the complaint. And now what we can do is usually what we do here is we'd extract variables and we could call it urgency. And we would then give that a mini prompt. The urgency variable is the urgency of the complaint. And usually we'll put something in here like urgent, moderate, or regular. But the problem is that now we've got the AI writing a response, and sometimes it could write it as urgent, sometimes it could write it as urgent. There's a couple of different ways it could write it, or this is urgent, right? And if you have a workflow attached to this, for example, and you say, go up here if it's spelled exactly like this, if it's urgent, that can cause an error if the AI spells it wrong. So now, what you can do instead is you can add these enum values. And in here, you can add this urgent, for example, or moderate, or regular. And the AI, when it's extracting this variable, will choose one of these, which is pretty cool. So now we've eliminated even more error in an AI like this. All right, so as you can see, the main updates here were the global nodes, the API call, extracting variables, and overall being able to configure every single node with an individual LLM and an individual voice, which, in my opinion, this makes the squad feature almost obsolete because it's more reliable and also a little easier to use. And as you can see, there's a lot of effort involved here, at least on my side, in reducing errors that this AI can have, but reducing them in a way that still makes the AI fluid and easily working. And this is basically like the retail AI conversational flow feature. It's added a few things like the dynamic variables that retail doesn't have, for example. And honestly, moving forward, this is probably going to be my go-to solution for building especially larger client builds on a bigger scale. So to give you a little bit of input to see where you could use this, for example, is first of all, I already gave you this example, a hotel with many different branches, like a restaurant branch. We have an actual hotel, room reservation branch. We could have a concierge branch, which also takes care of complaints. But there's a lot of other use cases like this. So for example, we could have an e-commerce store with individual branches of products, for example, or you could, for example, have a property management company that has branches for new tenants, has branches for maybe new property investors, maybe a branch for maintenance, and being able to organize all of this in such a structured way while still maintaining the flexibility is just great. I mean, there's nothing more that I could ask for in this case. And honestly, I think Vapi has done a phenomenal job. Of course, I'm going to stress test this a little more before I release this into the world. But so far, I'm very impressed, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with using this new solution as well. All right, so I hope I was able to give you some value in this video. As you can see, Vapi has a lot more tools and a lot more features that make it very reliable and easy to use. And honestly, after a bit of testing, this will probably be my go-to solution for any new client build. If you have any more AI-related questions, leave them in the comment section. I answer every single one. And also for those business owners watching, looking to adopt AI, I'm offering free AI consultation calls. You can access those using the first link down below, We'll hop on a call and see how we can help you out. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you in the next one.